We're going to use these couple videos here to explore a couple tools, namely the buffer and intersect tool. I wanted to come up with a fun little example close to home here. So we're going to imagine that there are 4 raccoons that live in Northwoods or close into Skidmore, and we're going to use the buffer tool and the intersect tool to answer the question of how many acres of raccoon habitat are within 30 meters of Northwoods trails. Now, I came up to Wikipedia and tried to play around with how big a raccoon habitat is. It's a big range. We're going to use about 30 acres as our home range side, which equates to a circle with about a 200-meter radius. So to do this, we're going to need to use our buffer tools. We remember from class, you can run a buffer tool on points, lines, or polygons, and it creates a new set of features buffered out from your input feature a set distance. This works for points, it works for lines, and it works for polygons. Let's take QGIS and test this out. On the map here, we can see our raccoon points, Margaret, Steve, Alan, Esme down here, and our color-coded Northwoods trails. So I'm going to do 2 things here. First, I'm going to create habitat buffers for our raccoons, and then I'm going to create trail buffers for our Northwoods trails. To do this, I'm going to come up to Vector, Geoprocessing Tools, Buffer. I'm going to say my input layer is raccoon names. Remember, I want that 200-meter distance. And if I wanted my raccoon output file to look like this, with no lines, overlapping lines at these buffer points, sort of a dissolved version, I would leave this box checked. If I want to maintain sort of individual circles, maintain the actual names of the raccoons in my output, I would leave this unchecked. And I'm actually going to leave it unchecked for our purposes here. We'll keep our other inputs to the defaults. We'll save it to file, and we'll click run. We now see 4 concentric circles around our raccoon name points. Move our points up so they sit on top there. I'm also going to come and make these a little bit transparent here so we can sort of see where there's overlap and see where there is just a single feature for each. All right, now we're going to run the same process for our trails. So our Northwoods trails are going to be our input feature. I want the distance to be 30 meters. I'm not going to dissolve my result because I want to keep the attributes. And I'm going to save it as I always like to keep a reference to the size of the buffer whenever I create a buffer. I find it's really helpful when you go back and are trying to use this data again or try to understand the process you take to get here. I'm going to run that. Great. So now what we have, I'm going to make those a little transparent too, is a series of buffers around our trails and a series of buffers around our raccoon points. In the next video, we're going to run the intersect tool to start understanding the places where both of these buffers have in common.